right, so you got the Bible, you got Dunwallow, you got 200 AD, you got the Druids, you got 300 to 1200, you got primarily the Anglos and the Saxons, 1042, you got Edward the Confessor, and then 1050 they start setting up the trial by jury. All right, now this ain't it. We got to go. We're going to 1776. It ain't gonna take much longer, promise. I don't know how long I've been on here. Man, it's not counting for me. Let me see. There we go. What's that? An hour? Hour and 32? All right. Give me 32 more. Give me 32 more. All right. So we did 510 to 1050. We'll stop at 1050 because everything changes for England in 1066. What happens in 1066? So we got 1066. 1066 changes England forever. 1066, a guy named William the Conqueror takes over England and he wins. So somebody say William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror. Dun, 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 dun. Buddy was a beast. I can't even hate. Well, I do. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. But Buddy was getting the job done. He took over. He said, yeah, we're not doing none of this common law stuff no more. He said, yeah, no thanks. I'm good, actually. So William the Conqueror. So when they say the common law of England, and see, why do I have to say this? Because you're going to start searching the common law of England and attorneys are going to tell you they're not going to go further than William. They're not going to go further back than William the Conqueror. So they're going to say, oh, the ancient principles of law from the ancient England, and they're not going further back than William the Conqueror. The United Kingdom's government traces their lineage to William the Conqueror. They do not go back any further. Okay, this is very important because a lot of the state statutes will say that the common law is they're going to say the common law of England is they're going to say the common and statute laws of England. Okay, well, they're only going to reference statute laws of England. That's technically not the common law. Technically, on this paper, this is the common law and nothing else. Like, that's it. Everything after 1066, they're good. Obviously, we use them. Yep, we're with them. Yeah, but that's not the ancient unwritten laws of England. What they call in Latin, it's called the lex non scripta. That's not the common law. Okay, that's very important. This stuff after 1066 is not the common law. It is, but it ain't. You know what I mean? You understand what I'm saying? Everything changes in 1066. Okay, so let me go back to my timeline. So 1066, this is where paperwork gets introduced. Why? Because you study Normandy. I haven't studied Normandy. I will. But it says that the Norman conquests, William the Conqueror invaded England. And as a measure of peace, which means he needed some people to work the field now. He said, I can't wipe out everybody. I need laborers. So he said they affirmed the common law by upholding the laws of Edward the Confessor. And it was a crucial decision that preserved common law tradition for future generations. However, they said, hold on now. Yeah, that sounds real good. That's a great sentence. Yeah, he preserved the common law for future generations. Yeah. He was not with none of that stuff. He said, however, they changed the language. So over the years, people stopped speaking in the Anglo-Saxon language. And they started speaking Norman, French. So the English we know today is not the same English they spoke back in the day. Okay. Very, very important. And that I'm gonna make a whole video on that, because that's a nasty situation. When they change your language, they change everything. All right. But okay, so just 1066, Edward the Conqueror says, "Oh yeah, we'll keep the common law. Sure thing, buddy." you know how they say. All right. So, but when you change the language, you're gonna change everything. So Norman French replaced Anglo-Saxon language, Anglo-Saxon English, as the official language of the common law courts. Okay, so very important. All right, what happened after that? So that's 1066. In the 1100s, let me see. Okay, King Henry II. So remember, this is a whole new lineage. After Edward the Confessor dies, that's it. He doesn't. Oh, I learned this today. I didn't know this. Edward the Confessor was like super Christian. And I don't say that in a negative sense, but to the world, this would be a horrible thing. Edward the Confessor said he didn't want any kids, so he had no successor. And when he got married, his wife also pledged not to have any kids. So they didn't have any lineage. So the lineage literally died with them. Okay, so this is very important. So William the Conqueror comes on the scene, and it's a whole new lineage of English kings. Okay, so you got William the Conqueror, but in the 1100s, you got this dude named King Henry II. 1100s. You got King Henry. King Henry introduced the writ system. Because remember, it was unwritten forever. For 1,000 years, it was unwritten. All right, so King Henry King Henry II introduced common law writs. And then I think they say also they kept improving on case law. And yeah, so they say he initiated the writ system, recording cases, setting precedents, which they say greatly strengthened the common law. And he also ensured that the jury remained the sole judges of the facts and of the law. So that would have been a major staple, which is in the Indiana Constitution and the Illinois Constitution. It may be in your Constitution. I haven't read everybody's Constitution. But I know Illinois and Indiana's Constitution say that the jury are the judges of the law and of the fact, and that phrase would have come from the 1100s, from King Henry II. Okay. Trying to see what else that I don't have on there. All right, so you got King Henry II would have introduced writs, improved case law, established that the jury are to remain the sole judges of the law and the facts. Okay. All right, boom. 1200s. What happened in the 1200s? We all know what happened in the 1200s. 1200s, we got this thing called the Magna Carta. When was the Magna Carta written and published? In 1215. June 12th. June 15, 1215. So we got 1000s, got William the Conqueror, invasion of Normandy into England. In the 1100s, you got King Henry II. He gave us writs, improved case law, precedent, and established that the jury are to remain the sole judges of the law and the facts, primarily in a criminal case. Okay, when we established the state constitutions, many of the state constitutions, it's all alluded to, but I don't know if every state constitution says it, but you get a trial by jury in a civil case and in, obviously, a criminal case. So they'll primarily say in a criminal case, you get a trial by jury, but many of the state constitutions, I know specifically Montana says, and I think Ohio, okay, well, you get it in all civil cases too. So All of that would have come from the 1100s. But in 1215, we got King John Lackland. His name is John Lackland. Nobody liked John Lackland. For lack of a short story, he had beef with the Pope, whoever was the Pope at the time, and the Pope punked him out. And he supposedly signed over all of the land of England to whoever the Pope was at the time. And that's where a property tax system would have got set up. And as a result, all the people of England were mad at this dude, and they forced him by the hand of a sword to sign the Magna Carta, ensuring English liberties would prevail with the English government. So these ancient English principles would remain inside of the Magna Carta. All right. But I want to make sure I emphasize this. This is all commercial at this point. When it starts being all about the paperwork, it is all commercial at that point. So from William the Conqueror, who was French, who was of French influence, King John Lackland. They didn't have last names, but I think they say his name is Lackland on the UK website. Remember, they're in the UK website. You can trade. They got a website of the kings of England, and they don't go no further than William the Conqueror. So John Lackland would have been his name. And then so the Magna Carta is a result of all the landholders saying, hey, we'll cut your head off right now. You're going to sign this, and you're going to ensure that we keep our English principles. And so that's what the Magna Carta is primarily about. The Michigan government has the Magna Carta on their website today. So 1215, June 15th, 1215, the Magna Carta. And I will also note, I know the Supreme Court of Georgia, I can almost cite Maryland, Georgia. I can find it if I really worked at it. I could find all the state Supreme Court cases affirming that the Magna Carta is the basis of the common law in the states, in all 50 states. And yes, including Louisiana. See, people say Louisiana is based on the French law, which is true, but they can't go beyond the boundaries of the federal constitution. So criminal law in Louisiana is supposed to be based on the common law of England. Why? Because the federal constitution restricts the Louisiana government. Now, you know what I mean when I say that. It sounds good coming out my mouth, and then you go to Louisiana, you're like, yeah, they don't do none of that. Some dude, I proved it to him. I proved it through Supreme Court cases that that Louisiana is supposed to be doing the common law for criminal cases. His head almost exploded. He said, I thought it was all French and civil law. Yeah, it's not supposed to be, but that's what they do, right? So it sounds good coming out of my mouth. I'm not stupid. I'm not naive, right? I know what's going on in it. That's why I'm making these videos, right? I'm not naive to say, oh, yeah, they're just doing the common law. No, they're not doing none of this, right? So 1215, the Magna Carta, or the Great Charter of English Liberties, was granted by King John, securing important liberties and privileges for all orders of men in the kingdom, primarily landholders, right? Because not everybody was free like that. Even under a monarchy, though, when they had their English liberties, they were living pretty good, right? So they said English liberties and privileges for all order of men in the kingdom. It insisted on rehabilitating the common law. The phrase law of the land in our constitutions and in the federal constitution and in our cases signify common law due process, which was an exact verbatim phrase of and in the Magna Carta. Okay? All right, what else happened in the 1200s? You got, if y'all are on the Patreon, for those who are on the Patreon, I'm literally reading from the Patreon. Just search timeline. And I'm literally just reading from this timeline. But this guy named Simon de Montfort, in 1265, Simon de Montfort summoned the first parliament, leading to establishment of the House of Commons, which included commoners. I don't know what that means. Personally, I don't think that was as important, but it's there. All right. All right, 1213, King Edward. So 1272 to 1307, you got King Edward the First. He reinforced the common law, unified English law, established a nationwide recording of judicial opinions. Okay, I've been reading about Edward. I've been seeing his name a lot and stuff. So they cite him a lot because he would have been the first. I think he was the first. Y'all remember when I explained Supreme Court case law, how they got volume 1, U.S. page whatever. So it'd have been like 53 U.S. And then that 53 would be volume 53 of the United States Supreme Court reports. I think the first reports that I found were from King Edward. I think those were the first English case law. So that would have been the late 1200s to the 1307. So we'll just say that's the 1300s. They said in the 1300s, due process of law appeared in statutes. In 1362, English became the sole language spoken in common law courts. The 1400s, they're just reinforcing common law principles. Nothing crazy has happened. All right, the 1500s, you got the Protestant Reformation. Let me see how I want to say this. So from William the Conqueror up until the Protestant Reformation, they affirmed the spiritual supremacy of the Pope. Okay, let me be very clear about that. They were considered Catholics. I would argue before William the Conqueror, those people did not consider themselves Catholics. And then from William the Conqueror up until the 1500s, at the Protestant Reformation, they would have denounced the spiritual supremacy of the Pope through the Protestant Reformation. All right, 1600s. So what did I say? The 1300s. They're just refining the process. So let's just say 1300s through 1500s. They're just refining the common law. So what was the biggest thing? King Edward I created Supreme Court reports. Or not Supreme Court, whatever they called it then. English court reports. So we'll just say that'll be the overview. English court reports. All right, my pen is not working. There we go. All right, and then we got 1600s. What happens in the 1600s? All right, let's see. There's two pivotal things, right? Virginia comes on the scene, right? So those people start migrating from Virginia to Virginia from England, all right? So boom, they set that up. They got this dude named Edward Cook. It is spelled Edward Coke. Edward Cook is perhaps, he was a judge, an English judge. He is by far, let me see if I can find it. Thomas Jefferson said if you wanted to start learning the law, you start with Edward Cook. Let me see here. Anybody getting anything out of this? Edward Coke or Cook. All right. Thomas Jefferson wrote some dude, and he said, the dude asked him, you mentioned to me of your intention of studying the law and asked my opinion as to the sufficient course of reading. He said, begin with Edward Cook's Institutes on the Laws of England. These give a complete body of the law. He said, an epoch the more interesting to us as we separated at that point from English legislation. All right, so Edward Cook, spelled Coke, but it was pronounced Cook, was a English judge, and he created, it's called the Institutes of the Laws of England in 4 parts. I think it's 6 books, maybe 7 books, but it's in 4 parts. So it'll be part 1 will have maybe 2 volumes. Part 2 may have just 1 volume, and then, you know what I mean? But it's in 4 parts. So it'll be, if you're going to look for them, look for part 1 and then see how many volumes were in part 1. But there's 4 parts, and they were written in the 1600s. So 2 things happened as far as English common law. They brought the common law from England to Virginia. That's how we got it. And then Edward Cook established the Institutes on the Laws of England. That would have been, in their day, if you wanted to learn the common law, you would have learned it from Edward Cook. And I got Supreme Court cases that say at the time of the Revolution, up until they got their state Supreme Courts and ultimately the federal Supreme Court up and running, everybody read Edward Cook's books on the laws of England. So Edward Cook is in his day, he would have been a beast. It says Cook's writings profoundly influenced American legal thinkers. All right. They had a civil war in England in the middle of the 1600s. That ain't got nothing to do with us. It really starts dying for us at that point. So I would honestly say Edward Cook is where common law would end for us. There's one last staple, and that would be in the 1700s. So let me write this down. You got 1600s. You got Edward Cook in Virginia. Virginia shows up. You got 1600s. You got Edward Cook. Plus Virginia. My pen is just not working. All right, it's not going to do it. And then the 1700s, you have the last great book or series of books on English law by a guy named William Blackstone. So that would have been the 1700s. That's in 1765. Sir William Blackstone created another 4 books called Commentaries on the Laws of England. It says it was first published in 1765. It is a work profoundly influenced the understanding of English law in the American colonies and later in the United States. They said they sold more copies of that book in the colonies than they did in England. So that's how important that book was to them. I have that book digitized and physically. and you'll start reading all these Supreme Court cases. And all they cite is William Blackstone. You'll see 3 BL whatever, because he wrote 4 books. So you'll see 1 BL com whatever page number. You'll see 3 BL com whatever page. They cite that dude for everything. And it's true. You start reading it, you're like, dang, yeah, they really... You start like, oh, that's where they got that from. Oh, that's where they got that from, right? As far as modern English and us understanding it, that's the best. And they actually updated it. Who is it? Oxford University, they updated it. So I bought the digital versions because they're updated. I'll be searching them. I read those more than anything now. You want to learn about Admiralty? You want to learn about all that stuff? William Blackstone. That boy, if you can get the physical books, I don't know how much. They can't be that expensive. They're free. Technically, they're free online. But if you want the modern, updated, cleaned up versions that don't look like old English, I think they're like 10, 20 bucks a pop. I have them on the Patreon, but they are free. You can read them in the old English. But as far as modern English understanding the common law or the laws of England, William Blackstone, that dude was a beast. That matter of fact, William Blackstone didn't even like the colonies, but that book was so good. They said, we don't care. We're taking it. He said that the colonies weren't entitled to the common law. They said, right. We'll take 50 copies. Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll take 50 of those. And they literally just took it and just rolled with it. So most of the cases that you start reading case law, you'll see they cite William Blackstone from most of their stuff. So it would be Edward Cook and then William Blackstone. So Edward Cook would have been the first guy to establish a couple of books that just teach you the law. And then William Blackstone would have came and really modernized it from the 1600s because he published that in 1765. That's 10 years before they broke off from Great Britain. So they said, yeah, we need these books. What else? I got, let me see. Edward Cook. I got there we go. I have a book on the Fifth Amendment, and they're telling a story in this book about Edward Cook's institutes. This dude, they said, though he had no formal training in law, he had Edward Cook's institutes and other law books at his side, and he mastered them well enough to conduct his own defense as well as any attorney could. I said, okay. And I went and got them books. And so Edward Cook, William Blackstone were going to be the pillars of understanding the principles that they used way back then. All right. And that's it. After that, July 4th, 1776 the rest is history. Really, I would say the Declaration of Independence would be the final coffin to say, hey, the British government is not obeying English laws. We want English laws. We're establishing and breaking off so that we can continue to have English laws. And the original 13 states, they set up their state constitutions based on English laws, the common law of England. And then when they set up the federal constitution, nothing changed. They reiterated it through the federal constitution. Does that mean everything is perfect? No, I don't. There's no law that's perfect outside of God's law. But it's the best we got. In human reasoning, it's the best we got on the planet. So outside of natural law and the actual Bible, that's the best we got, is the common law of England.